Night, North Atlantic, 1943. The German hydrophone headphones don't play music, but a death sentence. The low bass of 40 ship propellers, the heavy pulse of gearboxes, an acoustic shadow stretching for miles. This is not a caravan, it is a single beast, a huge convoy. And the wolf pack is already closing in. 5 more minutes and they will close the kill zone. And suddenly, the ocean seems to boil. The water near the tail ship turns white like milk. Thousands of microbubbles rise like a wall along the side. The German operator abruptly pulls off his headphones. The signal breaks like film. The target disappears. This is not a radio game, not a smokescreen. Air, bubble curtain. On the bridge of the British escort, the lieutenant only has time to exhale. Whatever it is, hold on. In one night, the convoy became quieter than the sea. And it all started with a sailor who was not believed when he said, "Sound can be broken if you learn to put the right noise into the water." Atlantic Ocean, 1943. Britain is counting calories, not ships. Oil for convoys to North Africa, flour for bread in Manchester, steel for factories in Clydebank, all carried on the backs of merchant ships. And each of their hearts beating in the ears of German hydrophones. Underwater, it's not a chase, it's an acoustic hunt. The convoy sounds like a single beast, the dull hum of propellers, the pulse of gearboxes, the long hiss of keels. The radio is silent, but the sea speaks. Sound near water has a longer memory than humans. It travels for miles, bouncing off layers of temperature and salinity. And now the wolf pack is closing in. The escort does everything by the book. Good old ASDIC, now we say sonar, sees the boat ahead. Aircraft searchlights cut through the night. The course is broken. Zig-zag. But the ocean has its own chevrons. Once the boat hides under the thermocline, the thin boundary between warm and cold water, the active pulse goes blind. But the passive ears of the Germans hear further. The propeller is a bell. The hull is a drum. The winner is the one who stays in hearing range longer. And a convoy, whatever it may be, a convoy of 40 or 50 ships, is still one target, one huge outline for the hydrophone. Break it up, and you'll survive. Stay a monolith, and you'll be taken to the kill box. That's our problem. We're too easy to hear, even when we're perfect on the map. His name is Tom Barlow, not an academy graduate, but the son of a dock worker from Birkenhead, a guy who first went down into the engine room at 18 and fell in love with the smell of hot oil. On the Royal Navy escort, he is listed as an oiler and motorman, a man whose hands know every bolt in the engine room. Spring 1943, North Atlantic. Convoys sail in an endless stream, and Tom learns to listen to the ship better than his own blood. He notices it by accident. During damage control drills, the chief engineer gives the order to release excess pressure, and Tom watches as air escapes through the drain at the side of the ship. The water swells with millions of bubbles, and suddenly the familiar vibration of the hull subsides, not in his ears, but in his bones. He looks at the whitish stripe along the waterline and whispers, "If you let it go, not in a rush, but in a steady flow. If you give a curtain along the entire length of the side, what will the boat hear?" On watch, he makes notes in his worn notebook. Compressor, 120 pounds per square inch, enough for one side. Need an auxiliary line from the pump, perforated pipe, holes every 2 inches. Fasteners, quick release clamps. Turn on at signal, don't burn out the compressor. He doesn't write brilliant. He writes, check that the fasteners don't break at 12 knots. At night, on watch duty in the boiler room, Tom plucks up his courage and goes to the chief engineer. "Sir, I have an idea. We can't hide the sound, but we can break it. Water with bubbles has a different density. The wave dissipates. Bubble curtain." The chief engineer listens, doesn't interrupt, and then says, "If you make another improvement without an order, you'll be painting cleats. And stop telling these fairy tales to the watch officer. We're fighting with iron here, not soap suds." Tom leaves, but his head is already filled with the sound of taps and bleed air. He knows that ideas are laughed at until they are implemented. And if he leaves according to regulations, the convoy will sound like a single beast again, and the wolf pack will once again close in on their kill box. So he'll have to implement it. During the day, Tom goes upstairs to where shiny shoes decide the fate of iron. There sit people with sharp eyes and cold logic, people with the rank of lieutenant, for whom every idea must pass through schemes, stamps, and eternity. And here's what's important. There are no bubbles in their papers. Hide the convoy with bubbles sounds like a joke, like a word that doesn't fit in the table, and the idea is dismissed. But the sea does not read orders. At night, the ship belongs to those who hear it. Down below, in the machinery space where the hum of the boilers resembles the heart of a beast, the band turns into a challenge. Here, between the steel stringers and hot oil, there is always an extra meter of pipe, a couple of old filters, and a coil of copper. Here, the desire to survive is stronger than any charter. Tom turns his thoughts into metal. A narrow living line, the future perforated line along the hull, soft punctures every 2 inches so that the air flows steadily, not in jerky spasms. A check valve to prevent water from flowing back. Steel quick-release clamps to tear off the system in one motion if the waves start to roll. He takes the supply from bleed air, an auxiliary line, without touching the main compressors. He doesn't break the ship. He fits his quiet instrument into it. This is not rebellion. This is jury-rigging. The ability of sailors to turn the impossible into the possible. Every rustle is like the beat of a metronome, the whistle of air in the pipe, the dry click when the clamp settles into the groove, the rough whisper of a file on the edge. And above it all, a simple, almost childish diagram drawn in chalk on the deck, from the manifold to the side, from the side to the water, from the water to silence. Let those above consider it ridiculous. Let them laugh at the phrase bubble curtain. At dawn, the Atlantic will respond. It will accept or drown. And now Tom writes down 3 words that always trigger progress. Turn on. Watch. Wait. And his hand reaches for the valve, a quarter turn between nonsense and works. Let's break down Barlow's trick so that any sailor at the mooring bollard and any engineer at the drawing board can understand it. It's not magic. It's density and patience. His idea was simply called a bubble curtain. Step 1. A living artery, a perforated pipe, is attached along the side of the ship, just below the waterline. Small holes are evenly spaced so that the air is released in a steady flow rather than in bursts. Step 2. Pressurized air is supplied from the ship's compressor through a manifold. On the control panel is an honest pressure gauge, and Tom knows the PSI at which the pipe will sing rather than break the clamps. What happens in the water? The bubbles create a layer of different density, a thin admixture of air that physicists call microporosity. For sound, it's like loose snow for skis. The wave front begins to break and scatter. The clear song of the propeller, the very bass that hydrophones hunt for, turns into white noise. Not silence, worse for the hunter. Mush. Instead of one animal, the rustle of rain. At a distance, the German hydrophone no longer picks up the convoy's complete acoustic signature. Where before the operator could read the range and bearing and even the order of the columns, now he picks up smeared noise. And the longer the curtain along the side, the wider the smeared trail, the harder it is for the wolf pack to close in. Barlow goes further. With one curtain, you hit the main base of the screws. But noise doesn't have just one home. It has a whole neighborhood. So you need a second line. He puts thin bubbles at the bow and rough ones along the side, essentially a double contour screen. The feed is given in stages, a two-stage feed. As a result, you knock out several frequency bands at once. The low end muffles, the mid-range becomes fuzzy, and the high end drowns in a whisper. And yes, it should be removed as quickly as it is put on. That's why the clamps are quick release. One movement, and the whole system is gone in a minute if the storm decides to play against you. But on a normal night, when the compressor maintains a steady flow, the curtain works like a simple tool. Turn the control valve a quarter turn, and the convoy ceases to be a song and becomes a whisper. This is the ingenious audacity of the idea. Not to hide the ship, but to break the language in which machines communicate underwater. No miracles, just a perforated pipe, a little air, and a very stubborn desire to live to see the dawn. The night folds into a black map. The order is course 300, speed 9 knots, interval like a ruler. The bubble curtain is activated without permission on the only ship at the tail of the column. If anyone fails, we fail, not the entire convoy. The signal will be silence. Ahead, destroyers are conducting radio intercepts. From the nervous underwater communications, they will understand when the hunter's sound disappears. The command is whispered on watch, like a password. The valve is turned a quarter turn, and our first breath enters the ocean. A whitish skin of thousands of microbubbles is born at the side of the ship. A thin, milky road spreads along the waterline. The first 10 seconds, nothing. The world is the same. The hum of the propellers, the muffled bass of the hull, the familiar echo for foreign hydrophones. And then, as if someone had hit the switch, the sound disappears. Not for us, for them. There are 4 of them. 2 boats to the left on bearing, 2 to the right on a parallel course. They were listening to the beast, the unified acoustic contour of the columns. And suddenly the beast disappeared, breaking up into rain. On the plane of sound, a desert. Instead of the steady song of propellers, white noise, like the whisper of a storm in the reeds. The German operator turns the gain knob, changes the filters, tries to catch the range and course, but each new setting returns emptiness. The first message goes out to the flagship on HF. Bearings are unstable. The enemy is losing the trail. A minute later, a second message. Irritated remarks intercepted on board the U-boat. Contact is jumping. Target is broken into pieces. On our map, small gray wolf heads begin to dart about as if someone had smashed a compass on the deck. We continue on the same course, maintaining the zigzag pattern. Let them think it's a coincidence. In the engine room, Tom keeps his hand on the pipe. The pressure gauge is steady, The steady flow is maintained. Above our heads, the steel rhythm of the ocean creaks, and overboard in the depths, the wolf pack is moving blindly for the first time in many months. This is not disappearing into a cloak of invisibility. It is a cruel trick with hearing. You leave the hunter's eyes, but take away his ears. And in the North Atlantic in 1943, that's enough for the night to be recorded in the log. No attack. Convoy alive. Dawn rolls in not with color, but with reports. The first line is dry as a deck plank. Radar contacts, almost zero. Acoustic contacts, random, late. Bearing disruption and range dancing, where there are usually 3 approaches per night and at least 1 torpedo in the kill zone. Today, an empty log. Not a single torpedo run entered the column. This is not a miracle or luck. It is the mathematics of noise. At night, we ceased to be a song for foreign ears, and the entire U-boat tactic fell apart at the seams. The hunter, accustomed to listening to the uniform bass of the convoy, heard white noise like rain on tin, and miscalculated. Where the sonar operator usually drew a clear line of course, he got a jumble of dots, and the wolf pack, instead of firing a salvo, began to rush about, losing pace, losing synchronization, losing the night. From the advance escort comes a phrase that is better than any statistics. The destroyer Kingfisher transmits on an open channel to its own. Briefly, almost lazily, the enemy is confused. And then, in form, the bearing is changing in jerks. They are not keeping their distance. It looks like we've zeroed their ears. Translated into human language, this means, you heard the convoy. Now you are listening to the ocean, and the ocean does not respond. On our maps, this is evident without the need for digital analysis. Yesterday, the detection zone stretched far beyond the order. Today, it has shrunk to the very edge. Yesterday, the wolf pack cut the trajectory with anticipation. Today it is searching for the tail and is late. Even reports of false periscope wakes surface later, like an echo of shattered confidence. The loudest thing at dawn is the silence. It stands between the ships like a new discipline, and in this silence, the main thing can be heard. The idea that was laughed at in the wardroom had an overnight effect. With a single line of air, we took away the hunter's main sensor. He still has his sight and his teeth. But at night, in the North Atlantic in 1943, the one who hears wins. And today we heard, and we heard the enemy fall silent. The morning brings not coffee but verdicts. There is an icy silence in the wardroom. In front of Barlow stands the man responsible for the lives of the convoy, the escort captain. His gaze is like a storm front. First a dry statement, then a blow. In the charter, this is called unauthorized modification, modification without orders, and usually ends in a tribunal. But at sea there is another article. Works, doesn't work. The commander hates initiative. The commander loves things that work. It's the same feeling, only experienced on different nights. He lists the facts. Risk to the order, violation of procedures, responsibility to headquarters. And then there is the fact that cannot be ignored. The convoy got through. At night, when we were supposed to have 3 U-boat attacks according to the schedule, we got 0. The enemy's bearings jumped, the distances floated, and the wolf pack never closed its teeth. The only numbers that matter in war are laid out on the table. The result. The commander looks at them, then at Tom, and the question changes direction. Not, why did you dare, but, what does it take to do it right? The answer is simple to the point of crudeness. Compressor upgrade, more powerful feed, second bubble line on the bow, bowline for thin frequencies. 2 more sets of pipes, quick-release clamps, and 1 day in dry dock. Then it will cease to be a trick and become a proof of concept that can be repeated. Skepticism is a luxury of the world. In war, skepticism must pay for its place with facts. The commander asks the last question, the most honest one. What if it's a coincidence? And here the whole story boils down to one line. Give us 1 more night, and a real wolf pack. Because science is not applause in the wardroom, but repeatability. If the second night produces the same effect, then what we have before us is not a trick, but a tool. The order sounds short, like the strike of a bell. Prepare the ship without breaking the order, and in this dryness the main thing can be heard. From this moment on, ideas marked as nonsense move into the work section. See, get ready. We are going to check the mathematics of noise at a speed of 9 knots. The second night is worse than the first. The ocean is angry. The storm tears at the waves, water splashes onto the deck, and the wind cuts through anything weaker than steel. There is no place for bubbles here. They are torn apart, crushed, mixed with foam. But the U-boats are not sleeping either. The storm is a shield from the Air Force for them, so we play along with their weather. Barlow turns the idea from a trick into a system. At the bow, thin bubbles, almost like silk, a bowline for the upper frequencies. Along the side, coarse ones, dense as a grinding stone, a sideline for the base of the propellers. 2 lines, 2 hammers on different nails. The feed is 2-stage. The first stage catches the top, the second presses the bottom. The compressor roars. The pressure gauge needle dances on the threshold of the red zone, but the engine room keeps a steady flow, micro-adjusting so that the curtain does not tear. The ship sings with 2 voices, steel and air. The air is quieter. Underwater, a milky gray path unfolds along the side of the ship. The bubble curtain stretches like a scar across the dark skin of the ocean. Inside the curtain, the sound is sick. The clear tones of the propellers break into a rattle. The wave fronts break like a ray of light in the drizzle. On foreign hydrophones, there is no song, but silence with needles. Rare clicks, the whisper of waves, the glide of foam. Where the acoustician is used to catching range and bearing, now there is white noise, snowing, and empty pockets everywhere. Dropouts. The squadron destroyer at the head of the order plays its part. HF intercepts are delayed. In places where they usually hold us by ear, their bearings diverge. 1 contact surfaces, and it's a mistake of tired ears. The boat rises for clarification, but the radar picks it up like the palm of your hand. The searchlight, a short white flash, and then the depth charges speak. The explosion is as muffled as a closed door, and again, only the wind. The rest change course, break their trajectory, and disappear into the shadow of the thermocline. The hunt is ruined, for the second time in a row. The storm works against us, and for us. It hides the veil in its foam and noise. It masks the breathing of the compressor under the roar of the shaft. Only one thing matters. The convoy is moving, and instead of the usual 3 torpedo attacks per night, the logbooks are blank. This is not a miracle. It is repeatability, the ultimate test of any engineering. The first night could have been luck. The second is proof. From the height of the map, one simple thing is clear. The beast of the convoy is no longer a single silhouette to foreign ears. We have not disappeared. We have scattered. Where there used to be one long bass note for dozens of miles, now there are pieces, Crumbs. Rain. A pack of wolves cannot sink their teeth into rain. It is here that Barlow's idea steps from delusion into doctrine. The wall of air is neither armor nor magic. It is a language that we and the ocean have agreed upon, so as not to be understood by those who listen to us in the dark. A bubble curtain is not armor or an invisibility cloak. It is a distortion. It does not erase the ship from the map. It breaks the acoustic signature. It makes the language that machines use to communicate underwater inconvenient. We do not disappear. We become incorrect for foreign ears. The price of this simplicity is fair and salty. Air, metal, risk. Sometimes a fastener breaks, a section of perforated pipe tears off, water leaks along the seam, and you run to patch it up while the pressure gauge needle dances near the red zone. At night, on the waves, with fingers that don't obey you in wet gloves and salt in your eyes. Sometimes the compressor begs for mercy. Sometimes you have to pull the curtain off with quick release clamps on the fly. This is not free invisibility. It's an exchange. You give the ocean air, and it gives you silence in return. Why is this both funny and brilliant? Because the idea can be sketched on a napkin. The bubble curtain is not a new fleet strategy, not a secret device, not millions in the budget. It's 3 pencil lines, a pipe, a valve, a supply. The power is in its reproducibility. Any escort with minimal dry dock time and a skilled crew can get a tool that changes the night. No new doctrine is needed. What is needed are eyes, ears, and stubbornness. It's funny because it sounds like a trick. We won with bubbles. It's genius because it's field engineering in its purest form. Spot the hunter's weak spot and knock it out with the cheapest hammer. Everything else is the discipline of repetition. Turn it on, watch, wait. Again. One more night. And the result is not in the applause, but in the empty lines of the combat log, where torpedo hits usually stood. If one such frighteningly simple line of air saves the column, let them laugh. We prefer returning home to laughter. And if they ever make a movie about it, it means that someone didn't have to hear the last, very short sound of their life. Sometimes it is not new ships that change the course of war, but new questions. What if sound could be broken? What if the beast could be made to whisper? In the North Atlantic in 1943, this was achieved through air and stubbornness. One night, one sailor, one bubble curtain, and the wolf pack lost its way to its prey. Not armor, not a miracle, just a simple line that translated the convoy from loud and clear to quiet and indistinct. If you like these field engineering stories, click subscribe, turn on notifications, and support the channel with a like. That way we'll be able to bring to light even more forgotten solutions that were worth more than steel. Next time, we'll dive even deeper into maps and radio waves. In the next episode, how an invisible line on the map saved hundreds of ships, ghost convoys and false radio shadows, when the enemy sees what isn't there and misses what is nearby. A story that by all accounts shouldn't have happened, but it did, and we'll tell you exactly how.